I'm Courtney.
And I'm Emily, and this is
Cheers
Cheers to
to
That.
that.
Welcome back to another week of your weekly podcast where we talk about motherhood, marriage, and laugh at everything in between. Joining us this week, we have our first official guest, Sam Gold. Hi, Sam.
Hi, guys. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, no, we're so excited to have you.
Yes.
Thank you for bearing with us while we
Have technical
my
difficulties.
God, yeah, us trying to figure out how to accommodate a guest was something we probably should have done before, we started recording. So we,
Live and learn.
yes, we figured it out, we think, unless we have to scrap this whole thing, TBD.
I hope not.
If we do, I will cry. But yeah, so Sam, let me stop talking. Go ahead, tell us about yourself and what you're here to do and all that jazz.
Yeah. So, as you ladies mentioned, my name is Samantha Gold. I am the CEO and founder of a new company called Motette, where we are going to be offering play and swim and sleepwear items for babies and toddlers from newborn to 6-year-olds. And I'm so excited to be here to share a little bit more about my journey and myself as a mom. I have two little ones, so I'm in the thick of it alongside all of you.
Join
Yeah.
the group. Join the
Yes,
group.
yeah, we live in the thick of it. No, I love it. And when we first met, I love what you're doing with the clothing brand. I'm so excited. It launches March 14th, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so it launches March 14th.
She's like Rain Man with dates.
Me, yeah, I do.
I knew it was March, but I didn't remember the date.
I really can't remember a lot of dates. That's why I'm a history teacher in my day job when I'm not podcasting. But yeah, so when we first met, you were telling us that you haven't launched yet, but like your company is so interesting. I'm so excited to talk about it. But that's not even the most interesting thing about you to me.
Mhm.
And what I have been dying, my husband has been asking me, like, when are you going to find out why Sam moved from America to Australia? So Sam lives in, do you live in Sydney?
I live in Sydney.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. So tell us about that. I'm like so intrigued
Yes.
to hear about our, expatriate.
Yes, totally. So this is actually the second time that I've lived in Sydney.
Oh,
So I actually lived here from when I was 20 to 26. So I was dating a guy in college, long distance, and all roads lead back to a boy, right?
duh.
And the only place that we could study abroad together was Sydney, Australia. And so that was where he went to Kansas and I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Yeah.
And the only place where we had some crossover in terms of study abroad programs was Sydney. And so that's literally what brought me here. And I fell in love with the country. And
Yeah.
I knew at the time that I was going to be switching my degree. I was actually a zoology major. I wanted to be a vet.
Wow. Oh
So I
my God.
switched my degree from zoology to business, and I knew I would have to do at least another semester. And I decided, why not transfer here to Sydney and finish my degree here?
Oh my
Which I did. And so honestly, at that point, I thought, oh, I would just finish my degree here and then that would be it. I'd come home.
yeah.
And then, as life happened, I broke up with the one boy, fell in love with another boy,
Oh.
and
You're
decided,
into now.
no, of
Oh,
course
okay.
not. There are many in between.
No, I love that. I love that. I didn't know if your husband was Australian too. I was just like, I'm not gonna lie to you. When I met you, I was expecting like a thick Australian accent, and then you came out and you're like, "Hi, I'm Sam," and I was like, where's the accent? But I'm glad honestly because sometimes I have like that thing where you can't understand accents. Like
I mean, that's me all the time.
yeah,
So
yeah, I can't make my brain work, so it works. But okay, so you lived there till you were 26, and you moved back to the
I
States.
moved back home and then I met my husband.
Okay, so
And so,
boring. All these American accents. I thought we were going to
right.
get something spicy in there.
Met my husband, and then we had two kids, Blair and Wes. So I have a 3-year-old daughter named Blair and an 18-month-old son named Wesley.
Oh,
And we're living most recently in Charleston, South Carolina. And then about 7 months ago, my husband started exploring other job opportunities. He works in tech sales, which is where I started my career as
yeah,
well. And so he was looking at other positions. And I said, well, why don't you connect with some of my former colleagues in Sydney?
yeah.
And so he did. And it was after those calls, and these guys were like, well, we don't have opportunities in Charleston, but we have tons of opportunities in Sydney. And so
Wow.
he came, and I remember I was like laying in bed, and he was like, what about moving to Sydney? And honestly, at first I was like, absolutely not. So one thing that I mentioned, you guys, is I am 7 years sober. And
Yeah,
so I lived here
definitely want to
15
talk to
years
you about
ago.
that.
And so I was not sober when I lived here. And so, I did a lot of drinking and partying my
Right.
first time around in Sydney. And I was like, kind of like, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to face that.
Sure.
I've moved on in my life. It's so different now. And so I honestly had this like kind of fear and this like immediate just like feeling in my gut that was like, oh, like that felt uncomfortable. I don't want to move back there. And then I really like sat with it and thought more about it and like reflected on it, was like, wait a second, this would actually be like really beautiful, like
Yeah.
to be able to go back and be sober now and build
Yeah.
this community and be a mom and also reconnect with people.
Sure. Talk about
And
full
make new
circle.
friends.
No,
So
seriously.
it's so full circle, and it is full circle. And what's crazy is, over the last few weeks in particular, I've reconnected with some old colleagues, and that's been really cool too, to see their journey as well as my own. I think like whenever we think about all of our like our past and maybe our mistakes and like we feel that shame,
Yes.
it's never as bad as we remember. And I think like we are our toughest critics, right? And
Always.
so I think it's been such a journey of me almost like forgiving myself and
Yes.
overcoming that shame.
Yeah.
And then also realizing too, I think the funniest part is like most of the people that I partied with back then are sober now too. So
Yeah.
I'm in good company.
Well, and like helps me because I like talk about getting like anxiety to the fullest extent the next day where I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my God, what did I say? What did I do? I'm being so annoying. And then I realized like the other people around me that like were also drinking a bottle of
Mhm.
wine, like they were worried about what they were doing. So they aren't even thinking about what I'm doing. And that is like so freeing in some ways. And it does allow for that forgiveness to yourself.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do your parents or family like want to murder you for moving back to Australia though? Like, are they like, why would you did it once for 5 years and now you're going back? You're doubling
Oh,
down on your
100%.
My
100%.
mom would murder me.
Well, talk about the
Literally.
longest flight ever
Yeah.
to get to you.
Oh yeah. She literally should probably kill me for telling you this, but
Oh, please, go ahead.
she yeah, she when I told her that we were going to move back the second time around, she literally was like, I need space for 2 weeks. Like she didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. She was like, I really like I need to sit with this. Yeah, she was not happy about it. And I get it, like especially for her now, it does, that is one thing that like breaks my heart about being here
Yeah.
is like the grandkids, right? Like
Right.
these are her only grandkids, and she's very
Listen,
active.
The big question is, would she ever move to
that's what I was
Australia
going
with
to
you?
ask. Yeah. Get her to Sydney.
Right. She's actually in Chicago, which is where I grew up, and she loves it. So she is like living her best life downtown
Fine.
with all of her other, with her friends and her community. So she's never left Chicago. She has no plans to, unfortunately, for the time being. But she did
Yeah.
come for 2 weeks over Thanksgiving,
Oh,
which was
good.
great to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Courtney doesn't live close to her family now, really, except for her dad. But
Mhm.
I live back like where I grew up. And I will say there is something to being far away because you get more quality time when you do get those visits, I think. And you're like, you get to trap them, which is my favorite
Well,
thing
you have to
do.
be intentional with your time, but it also takes
Yes.
a lot of planning. And I'm sure your flight from Chicago to Australia is expensive, and so it's planning out your time, but also like how are we going to financially do this? Or like, do you guys have plans to fly back with your kids?
Absolutely
To
not.
Chicago? I'm like, because how long is that flight? I've never done it.
You
have.
guys, so we flew over here. We ended up spending a few weeks in LA before we flew over, and so we like broke up the trip. But
Yeah.
if I was to go from Chicago to Sydney, it's over 24 hours
I
of
was going to
travel.
say it's so long. So
Oh my
I,
God.
yeah,
my daughter, I kid
no.
you not, screamed for, so it's like she screamed for minimum 20 hours. I mean, to the point where this was the only perk of her temper tantrum for that long was that they pulled us out of the customs line to the front of the line.
They were like, please
Please
leave.
go.
Get the hell out of here. Actually, turn around and go back. You're not allowed to enter our country anymore. We're done. We've had enough.
We've
seen
revoked
enough.
your citizenship.
Yeah, we've seen enough. Thank you for your time. That is, like, I don't even want to do a 3-hour flight with my son. So I mentioned before we started recording that I went to Vegas this weekend. And it was the first time my husband and I have flown without kids, without a kid. We only have one kid, in a couple of years. And we were like, this is so freeing. We're not worried about like any little person getting kidnapped and like sold.
Well, and
It's
also
beautiful.
other people's reactions. I know I get stressed out of like, oh, what if someone like,
Yes.
if my kid is having a meltdown, how are they going to react? Because you kind of hear horror stories on
yeah.
flights
Oh, yeah.
where people can just be awful, but then there's also people who extend a lot of grace because they've been there and they know it. But it's like that is almost more stressful to me than it's like,
Yes.
oh, what are other people around me? You know, I'm worried about that too. So
all of it. Flying with kids is not the move, especially two that are under 4. Goodbye. Couldn't be me. Couldn't be me.
so you're like, Mom,
I
you
mean,
get to
the only thing that works, our daughter also refuses any sort of medicine except for up her butt. And so
Okay, now it's my turn. My husband's going to kill me for saying that, but his mom gave him suppositories until he was pretty old. So my mother-in-law swears by suppositories. I have not done it to my son yet, but I have the fever reducers up the butt for that circumstance because you're not going to get a fever and die on me, boy. Like, we're going.
Because he hates, most medicine he does not like taking. You've learned the tricks now.
My son is the most dramatic person.
He will
it
gag.
Sounds like our kids sound like
similar.
they're related. If I squirt medicine in a syringe into his mouth, he will vomit. Like,
oh yeah, it's like my daughter.
Yes, he will not vomit because it's like so gross. It's out of spite. It like comes from deep within him. This just anger and need to expel.
He refuses. Yeah, he just refuses,
which is so his personality. So fun fact, I actually got engaged in Australia. So I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast really.
No.
But yeah, so my sister-in-law, my youngest sister-in-law is named Sydney. And for her senior trip, she wanted to go to Sydney, Australia. Like that was her like life goal. She always asked her dad for that, whatever. So my husband and I had been dating for I think 9 months, and I turned 21 on June 5th, and we flew to Australia the next morning. And we did that flight, 17 hours to Auckland, New Zealand, and then another 3 hours to Sydney, stayed in Sydney, did Bondi Beach. We went to Hamilton Island, and I got engaged in Hamilton Island. Yes, a week after my 21st birthday. I was a child bride. And then we went to Port Lincoln and did great white shark diving.
Wait, I just thought about this. Did your mom know that you were getting engaged in Australia?
Courtney.
Well, no, I didn't know if Connor had like prepped her before.
Yeah, he asked my whole family.
Okay, I assumed he asked.
No, he just went rogue and was like, "Hey, can you transfer custody of your child to me? I'm gonna be for." He's 2 years older than me. It's not we're both kids, but yeah, no, he definitely asked. They knew. My mom was bummed that she wasn't there, but like, gets to get engaged in Australia? That was such a cool experience. So I have done that flight once. And then we flew all over the freaking continent when we were there. And I feel for you, but I loved Sydney. And the culture and the people, they're so nice. Like, I love it. I would go again. We say we're going to go for our 10-year wedding anniversary. So we've got
that's a great idea.
2 years left. Yeah. And then back to Australia for us.
How has it been for you, Sam, with like building that community so far away? Because I know that can be difficult, which it sounds like you have like a past there, so you're able to like reconnect with colleagues. But how has that been building that community on your little lone island?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's been great. Like I think I'm a pretty social person. And I think, with anything, you get out what you put in. And you have to like make an effort. And there's a pretty great community of other female entrepreneurs here. And actually, it's so funny. I'm a part of this group called Entreprenista. For anyone that's listening, that's an entrepreneur. It's great. And it's a wonderful way to just like connect with other women, share the ups and downs and the challenges. So it was actually like someone that's become super close friend of mine here. I met through the Entreprenista community. Their best friend, she's from Toronto, and she was like, "Oh, like my best friend lives in Sydney. You guys should meet." And turns out that she has a young daughter and lives around the corner from me. Perfect. And so that's been amazing. And like I said, I've reconnected with some people that I knew from before. And then also through like being sober. I've made a ton of friends. I think that's like the other great thing about being sober is it doesn't really matter where you are. There's always a community, like a recovery community that you can join and go to meetings. And, like people are so open. It's like one of those things where like I could go to a meeting and say like, "Hey, I'm Sam. I'm new to Sydney. I'd love to connect with some of the women after the meeting." And you'll have like 10 people come up to you and give you that.
And they're connecting with you and they're not like, "Hey, let's go get a drink." Cause I feel like that's the thing, right? Whenever you're like meeting new
Yeah.
people. That's been
Mhm.
my experience. You get to start a new job. It's like, okay, let's like go to a happy hour and actually get to know each other. And it's like,
It's something that revolves around alcohol.
mhm.
So it's
So
like, how do
connecting in
you?
that way with people
Mhm.
that have
Yeah.
similar mindsets, like it's like, okay, well, instead let's like go to the park or go shopping or do whatever. I don't know what you do, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I do want to hear more about your sober journey. So you've been sober for 7 years. Um, what led you to decide to not have alcohol at all?
Yeah. So I grew up in an alcoholic household. My dad was an alcoholic. He actually passed away from alcohol related complications. He had heart surgery
Sorry.
and his blood wouldn't clot when I was 18. So I think
Okay,
that was actually one of the other reasons why, maybe
sure.
subconsciously, I moved to Australia too, because it was right
Yeah,
after that happened.
yeah.
And I think I was like, get me out of here. I want to run as far away from this as possible.
Understandable.
I get that.
Um, but it was also like alcoholism was something that was really spoken about. Like my
Mhm.
mom talked about it all the time. She has still to this day like a lot of fears around it. Both my
Yeah,
parents grew up in alcoholic households, and so it was something that was like drilled into me. Like this is
right,
in your genetics. You need to be careful.
right.
You need to look out for this. And so I always like had that in the back of my head.
Yep.
And I never drank every day. I never drank every weekend. For me, like the way that I describe being an alcoholic is like what happens to you when you put alcohol in your body. And so, like, for me, like, there's a switch that goes off. It's like a
Yeah,
physical reaction where I kind of go from 0 to 100 as soon as I
right.
consume that first drink.
Yeah,
Um, and so, like, again, like for me, it was also like the anxiety that I'd feel every time I drank.
right.
Like waking up in the morning, what did I say? What did I do?
Yep.
Like,
Been there. Been there.
yeah, and I just like I got to a point where I was just like sick and tired of feeling that way. And
Yeah,
also like it started to affect relationships. It started to affect
sure.
my career. At the time I was a manager at like a really large Fortune 500 company,
Yeah.
and we'd have team events and I was the manager and I wouldn't remember how I got home.
Ugh.
And
So, and
it's
that
just
like gives you such a pit for like days. That's
Well, and
those
I think
situations I've been in, and it's like,
so many people can
yeah.
relate to you in that way of
mhm,
um you weren't an everyday drinker, or like
mhm.
you weren't the
Right.
picture of what people think of whenever
Assume of
you
alcoholism.
see or
Mhm.
whenever you hear
Right.
of alcoholism, because I've had it in my family as well. And I grew up like afraid of alcohol because it was drilled
Yeah.
into us as well, of like this is a bad thing. And then I got out
Yeah.
on my own, and it's like I discovered it like, oh, this is
This is actually
fun.
fun. Yeah.
But then it's all of
Yeah.
the other things that come
Yeah.
with it, of like that anxiety that we
Yes.
talk
Yes.
about, like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, what did I
What did
say?
I say? What
What
did
did
I
I
do?
overshare?
Yeah.
And yeah, whenever you just don't have control of yourself. So
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of our listeners will
Oh yeah.
understand
Oh
that.
yeah, no, that and like I think just having the mental fortitude to like make that decision for yourself is so amazing. And thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story with us, because I know that's not an easy thing to like admit and talk about, but it is
Yeah.
so impressive. And it's like, I don't know, it's
Mhm.
inspiring. Like,
It is
oh, you can do
inspiring.
that too, and like anyone can do it. It just takes that kind of mental strength. So, I guess you did that way before you had kids, though. So, were you married whenever you decided to stop drinking?
No, I met my husband, when I was 2 years sober,
Oh,
actually,
awesome. Okay,
and
cool.
we met in like, he's in recovery too, he was a year sober,
Awesome. Oh,
so
that's
we
perfect.
really
So y'all
we
are
shared
able to, yeah, share that and like
Mhm.
push each other. And I love that. That's amazing.
What did you find difficult at first? Because it's something we've talked a lot about on this podcast, is like we're both very social
Hmm.
people, but like social to us, we like to go out and have a drink with coworkers or with friends
Yeah,
Sure.
or whatever. And it's like, if you want to start that sober journey, how do you get away from like
Mhm.
that is your only social piece?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
how do you start to
yeah,
incorporate other things without alcohol?
yeah, so I think, and again, I wanna preface this with, like, this is my experience, and
Sure. Yeah.
so, you know, there a lot of people would probably share different advice around this, but for me, it was, at least in the beginning, I didn't go to as many bars or, outings where there'd be, like, a ton of alcohol. Like, today, I have no problem being around alcohol and being around
Sure.
people that are drinking. That being said, I think, like, your preferences and, like, what you find fun, like, just changes. I think in the
Mhm.
beginning, like, there is a lot of fear, and there was for me around, am I gonna have a social life? Like, are all
Right.
of my relationships going to change? I think a lot of people get sober and they're like, well, I can still do the same things, and I just won't drink. And I think there's like an old saying that's like, you go to a barber shop, so many times, eventually you're going to get your hair cut.
Yeah,
And
no, literally.
so,
That's
it's
so
like,
true.
you're probably going to end up picking up a drink again. And so the
Absolutely.
advice for someone who's like newer in sobriety and like really trying to give up alcohol is like, don't do that anymore because
Yeah.
it's really hard. And if you keep putting yourself in that situation, eventually you're probably going to give in. But honestly, like a lot of my friendships changed, and that's the reality of it.
I'm sure that's a big like life transition. And I mean, if it's something you're so interested in committing to and other people don't have that same interest with you, that's a challenging um, thing to
Yeah.
Because they
overcome.
might offer like a level of support, but it's not going to be the same level if you don't have that
Well, and if they're
person
like pressuring
willing to
you,
be
then
sober
you're
too.
like, ew, no thanks, like leave me alone. And they're like, what's the big deal? I mean, it's
Hmm.
just I can see how that
Yeah.
would be challenging. What do you feel like the time frame was like when? And maybe this was before you even started. When did the switch flip where you were like, I'm good now? Like it's not even a thought in my brain. Like how long do you think that took?
Um, so here's the thing, right? Like, I think that addiction's at like the core of this, and that can
Huge.
manifest in any way.
Yeah.
So, does it still like pop up in other ways for me today? Yes. It's not that
Right.
I crave a drink or a drug, but do I want to go on a shopping spree from time to time? Yeah.
Yes. It's like that dopamine
Yeah, whatever's going to give you
hit.
that hit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No,
So
for
I
sure.
don't necessarily think that I'm like ever cured from this. I don't think
Sure.
anyone's ever cured from, the disease of alcoholism or addiction. And I think that is why it's really important on a daily basis to do work on yourself. And
Yeah.
that can look like many different things, but just taking care of yourself kind of like mentally. And that's why community is a big part
Mhm.
of, any recovery program, because I can call up my friend and say, even like, yeah, oh my God, like with a new business, there's this, for instance, like one of my prints, like the ink like ran and I had to pull it from my bulk order because it was like a blueprint. And that can sometimes happen with like in shades of indigo. It's
Yeah.
like something like that can be like triggering. And it's like,
Mhm.
I want to go have a cake. I want to go eat cake.
Yes.
I'm gonna go like eat my feelings. And
It's
so
yeah, those feelings, sorry, not to interrupt you. Those feelings
no, you're good.
of anxiety, I'm learning like through therapy and through working on myself.
Yeah.
It's like those feelings of feeling overwhelmed, there's no way to get those
Right.
out of your body. Like it is a reaction, right? Like anything we're addicted to or do to suppress those feelings, like that doesn't
Hmm.
that's what changes, but the underlying feeling is the same. So I totally get
And how
what
are
you're
you
Yeah.
saying.
going to learn how to cope with that? Because we
Yeah.
all
And
cope in
in a
different
healthy
ways.
way,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like not leaning into those like unhealthy coping skills or
Yeah.
like outlets like food or drinking or drugs. It's
Right.
more about like, I'm going to call my girlfriend and vent and share about this. And
Mhm.
then that's going to help me just kind of like like be in those feelings and process those feelings in a healthy
Sure.
way, or like go for a walk or listen to a
Right.
meditation or go to a yoga class, like
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Like
And so
find
it's not that I like don't have those feelings come up
sure.
today. It's just that I lean into more like healthy tools
Yeah.
when things like that do arise.
Well, and what we say is our kids are going to learn these healthy tools from
Ugh,
us. And it's like, I
yes.
feel
Right.
like my 5-year-old is already light years ahead of me at just a couple of years ago because she's able to say like I'm frustrated and she can say why she's upset,
Mhm.
and I'm like I'm still learning how to do that. And
How to
so
even admit that you're
imagine,
frustrated.
yeah, and so imagine
Yeah.
if we're modeling how we're coping with
Mhm.
things, they're going to learn
Right.
that from us,
For
or
sure.
they can learn how to cope with alcohol,
Mhm.
so it's
Mhm.
like you're kind of, I think parenting has definitely like put a lot of things on the forefront for me, a lot like my mental health,
Yeah. Yeah.
realizing how many things I still have to work through
Oh, we
because
all do.
my kids are like they're they're
They're
right
little
there
tiny
watching,
mirrors
soaking
showing
everything
you.
up.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
yeah, learning
Yeah.
those coping skills and knowing that like those, learning how to take a walk when we're upset or
Mhm.
stressed, like our kids will learn how to do that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and something that, my husband and I are in couples therapy and we're learning about like healthy fighting. It's
Yes.
like we're going to get in fights and that's okay. And like it's okay for our kids to see that, but they want to see like, a healthy, disagreement and
Yeah.
communication pattern as opposed to like mom's filled with rage and storms out and dad chases her and that's and
Mhm.
it's scary and yeah. So I
I
mean it's like I'm a work in progress.
no, we all are, and I think the fact that you are a work in progress is more important and valuable than saying like, oh, I've got all the answers now. Like I got it.
Well, and the more we talk about and normalize, like even couples therapy, because I know my husband and I went through couples therapy for just a little while when my daughter was 1. And when I first brought up wanting to go to couples therapy with him, he even had like that.
Like a bit like, oh my God, are we getting
Yeah, no,
divorced?
he was like, is that what you want? Like, you want a divorce? And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, you don't understand. Like, couples therapy is to help you like learn healthier ways to cope with things together. And I think like the more it's talked about, the more it'll be normalized.
It
like,
reduces
couples
that
therapy
stigma.
doesn't have to mean, sometimes it does, but it doesn't have to mean that you're at the end of the rope with somebody.
Yeah.
It just means like you're wanting to learn healthier coping mechanisms with them.
Well, and we've made that transition from like individual therapy. I feel like whenever you tell someone you're in therapy, they're like, oh, cool, dope. But if you say you're in couples therapy, it's like, oh, what? But it is like, therapy is so like freeing to me, right? I'm learning so much about myself and how I operate and why I do certain things and how to not do certain things that I don't like about myself. And so I think everyone should be in couples therapy. I think you should be required to do couples therapy before you get married. It is like learning those things, and like healthy conflict resolution, but also like showing conflict resolution is so important, because I think there's value in not having like the storm out in the big fights, but there's also value in showing conflict.
And how do you repair it?
Exactly. Because I know like people like in my family, there's been talk about like, oh, well, you guys modeled such a perfect relationship, like with grandparents and stuff. So then their kids, like my parents' generation, doesn't know how to fight because my grandparents just seemed like so in love and so happy. And so like it's
a fine line.
Have a balance, right? So I think that's amazing and good for y'all. Like I'm so deep in therapy right now. I love that shit. I love it.
And I think the biggest thing actually that I didn't expect was like having awareness around how I'm like projecting. Honestly, for me, it's like I'm really projecting onto my husband, you know, things that are unresolved from my past with my dad. And so it's like my therapist. Like,
we're laughing and looking at each other because we both can like understand that so deeply, and we're both working through those things in different ways through our own therapies.
I mean, and it's like it doesn't make your dad like a terrible person. Like we both love our dads, and I'm sure you love your dad, but it is like it is just understanding like the human experience, and like your parents have made mistakes. Everyone's parents make mistakes. We make mistakes as parents, and our kids will be in therapy talking about what we did wrong, and that's okay. That's like how we all process those things. But yeah, it is interesting.
That projection piece, though, I so connect with.
Well, very rarely those things that you're doing, like I know, because when I'm acting like a psycho, I'm like, what am I actually mad about? Because it's not that you didn't like put your clothes in the dirty clothes hamper. It's like that I like got on the scale and I was too heavy today, like heavier than I expected. And now all of a sudden I'm like, wow, how dare you? And it's like, no, you're angry with yourself. Like this is, I'm projecting my insecurities on you because I want you to feel gross with me. And it's easier to like get sucked into that like pain vortex,
or just those patterns that like I've developed my own coping mechanisms that aren't healthy, and it's these patterns that I've developed over years and years, and it's easy, and it's also a pattern to project on my husband. That's the easy thing to do until it kind of comes to a head, and it's like no, like I can't do that. I've got to learn some other way to work through that stress.
And sometimes it takes someone who's completely objective to the situation to point that out. Like I could not have spotted that.
No, we go to the same therapist. Like, God bless her. I don't know how she does it. But it is like the objectivity is so valid because, like, yes, you can vent like your girlfriend and everything, but to have someone that doesn't have any stake in like what you do and your decisions is so helpful. And just to like see things from an outside perspective. They don't know your family, they don't know your friends, they don't know your spouse, but they can help give you tools to navigate what you're telling them and feeling. So yeah, I love that. I could talk about therapy. I wax poetic about I think we had a book club. I wish you didn't live so far away. Come to book club, but I think I spent the better part of book club talking about therapy because
honestly, at this point, we need a referral code, Wendy.
Like, no, literally, I always say I'm like our therapist.
Like, preach her name everywhere we go.
And what really needs to happen is I was referred to her by another friend, and that friend needs a referral code because it was like this domino effect. And I'm like, girl, I'm paying your mortgage. Like my mom goes to her. I'm always like, do you want my number? Do you want my therapist number? Do you want my therapist number?
That's how I am about my holistic doctor.
Yes.
I'm like,
everyone has their vices.
You should really go to him. I'll give you his number.
Yes, sharing all the things. Yeah. No, she's like, please stop sending me people I can't do anymore with anyone that's connected to you in any way. Well, again, we can talk about therapy for 1,000 hours, but I do want to talk about your clothing brand.
I know, I do too.
Yeah, you made the transition from corporate, which I didn't work in corporate probably as long as you, but I switched from corporate work to teaching, and so I know what that is like to have that corporate transition. So tell us a little bit about your journey into being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I actually did a post on LinkedIn today about what it was like to finally make that decision. Because the truth is, there were many years where I felt unfulfilled in a corporate role, but I had the flexibility that came with it. I had great benefits and a great salary. And so it was really hard to walk away from that. And there were so many people that were like, this is, it's just a job, it provides these great benefits. You're a mom, you have this flexibility, don't take that for granted. And so it took me probably like 2 or 3 years of having this like itch and desire to start my own thing, to really go out on a limb and do it. And honestly, like one of the biggest things that, stars kind of aligned and I was able to afford to do it because, financially, it's a big investment and I'm completely self-funded. But when we sold our home in Charleston, we did really well on the sale of the home. And so I'm using, the majority of the profit to fund the business. And when you are in a product-based business or in that space, some of the biggest costs are inventory because you have to pay for those bulk orders up front. And so, that afforded me the ability to pay for it on my own versus potentially getting outside investors or, getting a small business.
Having to go on Shark Tank, put yourself out there. Yeah. I mean, I would rather sell my house too.
I like that line. It's like more direct. You're not having to like pinball back and forth to like, please give me money. It's like, I got this. This is on me. This is 100% me. I love that. That's amazing. What a leap of faith and
how did your husband feel about this whenever you came to him? And it sounds like you'll have a great relationship, but I love that it sounds like he was probably really supportive when you came and said, like, I want to do this.
He is like my biggest advocate. And honestly, it's so funny because, I'm like the one that's kind of filled with fear. What if this fails? And he's like, have you met yourself? Like, it's not going to fail. Okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
No, that is wonderful. And I will say Courtney's husband, Matt, is very much that way with the podcast. He's like, you guys are going to make it. You're going to.
He wanted to buy a billboard. I'm like, no, sorry.
He literally
we're not spending our money on that.
We hadn't even started the podcast yet. And he was like, we're buying a billboard. It's only $5,000 for a month. And we were like, so we're not doing that. That's not even going to be on the radar of things we're going to do at any point because it's a freaking billboard.
Like we're not 70 years old.
No, excuse me.
Like
my
the new thing is
social
social media, Matt.
Yes, yes. He's like posting it on the Facebook.
What about a billboard?
My husband's more reserved, but
he's supportive in like every way.
Supportive.
But it's just more, I think, like the money thing, which is how I am. Like I would support Matt in anything he wanted to do, but part of me is like, but like, are we going to be good money wise? Like, is everything okay? Because it's such a risk. Starting a business is a risk, but I mean, like looking at your page on Instagram, like you have it so curated already. We're like, she must be in marketing. Like you just,
I was
how
wondering,
do you figure out all of this? Like you're starting it from the ground up. How did you know what to do? How to start it?
What was your job in corporate? Were you in marketing in some way?
No.
Gosh, my suspicions were wrong. I was like, she had to be a manager of marketing of something.
That is so funny. And like, thank you, because it's all, I do my social on my own.
It's beautiful.
Wow.
No, I spent most of my career in tech, in sales and then sales leadership. So, but I've always had this passion for design, in particular, like interior design from such a young age. And so this was kind of, me bringing all of my passions together in terms of like the business side and also being able to be creative.
Yes.
Um, and so, yeah, if you look at Motette, like most of it is elevated prints. And so for me, and you might like see some of those prints traditionally on like a curtain or a pillow or wallpaper. And so it's very much like interior design
I
inspired.
love
Like
that.
I am not a big fan of, like cartoon figures or animal prints or sequins or slogans. And so I wanted something that felt really elevated for babies and toddlers. And I felt like that was really missing from the market. And in particular, the bamboo clothing space. So I wanted something that was like eco-friendly,
Yeah.
sustainable,
Mhm.
um, gentle on sensitive skin. So
Yes.
it really is a combination of like all my interests coming together.
I
And
love
it's funny
that.
that you say that about my Instagram because the truth is, I only launched it a few months ago and I was going to wait until the official launch date. And someone said, no, like it doesn't have to be perfect, just get started.
And you're
And
crushing.
thank you. But yeah, so I did. And, I do all my photography, I do all my editing, I do all my captions and posts.
Yeah.
And what's like, I actually think it's amazing to share like how we even got to where we are today with me being on this podcast. So I have
Yeah.
something that I call my Motat inner circle, and it's moms that are helping me really make like all different types of decisions. And so I post on there, I'm designing my summer collection right now. So things like prints, what should I introduce next? So moms have said that they really want to see like crib sheets next, or they even want like a mommy and me sleepwear
That's
set.
so cute.
But
Yes.
something that I posted last week, which is amazing, was, hey guys, I've been, coming on different podcasts as a guest. Are there any podcasts where you think my story would resonate? And Emily
And
said,
he's
yes,
like,
come on
get over
ours.
here. Get over here right now. Yeah. I know.
I love
No,
that.
well, and like I mean, our business, if you want to call like our podcast that, I mean, hopefully it turns into a business someday. Like that's the
Yeah,
dream, right?
That's the goal.
But it's a lot less like tangible than what you're doing, right? But I totally relate to like we do all of our own social media, we do all of our own editing, our
Truly
own
starting from the ground up. Neither one
Yeah.
of us have like big social followings because a
No.
lot of things with podcasting that we've
Right.
talked about is like these people who already have 100,000 followers start
Right.
a podcast. Well, of course, it's easy to start from that. Maybe not easy. Okay, I'll give them some credit.
Pretty easy. It's
But
pretty easy.
when you're starting from the ground up, like it can be hard and it can be even discouraging at times. But
Oh,
then it's like
yeah.
one thing happens and all of a sudden, like you're invigorated again. Like
Reinvigorated.
even you coming onto this, I told Emily, I was like, it just like gave me the little umph that I needed
Yeah.
to like really like keep at it
digging in
and
and-
keep
yeah.
digging
Yeah.
at our goals.
No, for sure, for sure. And it's so nice. Like, I mean, not to be like this person, but like women helping women and making that community, like it really is.
I think it
so
is good to be that
powerful.
person.
Well, I'm
You're
just
like,
saying,
yeah.
like, I don't want to be like, girl, you know, like I'm not trying to be like
Yeah.
annoying about it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, a group, like the world full of moms and women that want to connect and help each other and like push each other up. Like, that's so. Why are we not digging into that well more? Like there's so many opportunities to do those things and support each other.
Well,
right?
and with this, we set out, like we talked about, we want to build a community. And that's why we've even started like the book club. Like we want a community and like even being able to talk to you. I'm like, this is amazing. Like this is a way to build community of women, of moms, of spreading the word. And like even like through your business, like it's so exciting for you. It's so like excited. You're halfway across the world and yet we're getting to talk to you and learn, you know, about you as a person and as a business owner. It's really interesting to me.
And I'm just want to say how excited I am because one, I know you have a son now, so I know you're going to be throwing some boy clothes out there because my son, girl, we are not in our curated looks era. My son only wants to wear Lightning McQueen. And it's a tragedy. It is not good. He goes to school in full pajamas all the time because that is what.
Well, that's good. I have a lot of sleepwear that.
He will love it for school. Perfect. Like that's what he likes. But like
even with the boys' clothes, like say you go to Target and like I separate character clothing. Like character clothing is a whole other thing, but it's like whenever you go into their normal section and it's like a dinosaur doing a flip on a skateboard.
I
Like,
know.
why do we need that? Like, give me a plain shirt or a character.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, yes. If you want to put it on your radar, if you want Courtney's son to be a Motette baby, he needs button ups. Courtney's son likes to look like a retiree from like Boca Raton. Like he literally, and he walks around like a little old man with his
belly out,
his button ups and his collared shirts. That's like how he likes to dress.
And then you're like,
so
cheese,
cute.
and he says cheese.
Yeah,
and
he like will cheers
Aw.
coffee with you. He is an
He's an-
80-year-old man in a 2-year-old's body.
He
It
is.
is hilarious.
They told me that at his daycare when he was like 9 months old.
Yeah,
So
yeah, literally. So I'm so excited. I
I
can't
know,
wait.
me too. The clothes are very, very cute. They look, well, they're, you said bamboo. So obviously they're so soft. They look
Yes.
soft. Like in the pictures, you can even just tell like how comfortable they are. And I think playwear is a big thing right now too, and like
Yes.
matching sets. And so like, even if they're pajamas, like to
I
me,
know,
it's like,
it's so cute.
it's so
Well,
versatile.
I also have a matching boy and girl sweatsuit that are.
Oh my God, I'm in love.
Courtney's on her way. First to order. Add to cart. Add to cart.
Yes.
I do want to ask you, where did you get the name Motette from?
ChatGPT.
Oh, you mean our Lord and Savior, ChatGPT, my hero?
I use that for everything. I
Yeah.
use that to help me come up with questions.
No, yeah. So Courtney and I are both teachers. I don't know if we told you that. We're like, our day job is being teachers. ChatGPT has changed my life as an educator because I can be
Mhm.
like, input textbook pages and be like, hey, make me a 5-question quiz on this at an 8th grade level. And it's like, okay,
It
yeah,
helps.
tight.
It helps me with grad school.
Yeah.
ChatGPT does it all. It helps me meal plan.
Yes. But
Yeah.
we tried to use ChatGPT, I think, to come up with our name too. And you actually suggested cheers to that. And I don't even remember how we
Yeah, the
landed on that.
ChatGPT names that it came up with, I don't think like
It was
didn't
like
sense
2
what
moms,
we were trying
1
to create.
microphone. It was like, oh, okay, well, that's not exactly what
we were
we're
going
doing
for.
here. Yeah.
Come up with another name, and then I made the mistake of coming up with a name, and buying the domain and doing all the things, and then after that hiring a trademark attorney, whereas I should have done it in the reverse order. And so that trademark wasn't available. And so I went back and forth and submitted so many names. I mean, probably like 10 or 12 for them to run searches on. And finally, they were like, all right, you need to make up a word. Okay. And
Like,
so my
original
whole
word added to the language.
literally. And so my whole thing is, based on kind of like petite motifs, so little prints. And so I said to ChatGPT, come up with a word based on petite motifs. And so it came up with Motette.
I love it. Well,
cute.
and even the name itself, like you wanted elevated children's
Yeah.
clothing, the name matches that
No, it's
vibe,
like,
so.
it's giving like French country. Like,
I love it.
yeah, like I imagine a little baby in a cute, like, outfit sipping tea. You know what I mean? Like, very elevated.
It's like my daughter wears it. I mean, my kids wear it every day to daycare, but my daughter, who's 3, tells everyone, this is Motette.
Oh,
She needs her own code.
she needs her code and she needs
That's
a
a
salary.
great
as
idea.
marketing. Yeah. Yeah, you need to just give her little business cards.
Speaking of salaries, this is like a great tip. If anyone is listening and is a business owner, so I've employed my kids and I've set them up with custodial Roth IRAs. So you can do this for your children and you can do it from when they're born until they're 18, as long as there's like a valid business reason. So for me, like my kids are my models for all of my clothing.
Sure.
And then you put in up to $7,000 a year, and with compound interest, they'll be millionaires by the time they're 65.
That's beautiful.
Wow.
Our kids have no benefit or value to what we do at this time.
We have to hire a babysitter to be able to podcast, so
We have to put the babysitters in the Roth IRA.
I don't know if you guys do a photo shoot and you have your kids in it.
Yeah. We'll figure something out now that you told us about that.
That is so.
This is the piece though that's like so valuable to me to hear from other people that are business owners. Because again, like our business isn't very tangible. Like there's not, just to be completely honest with you, a lot of revenue from it. It's more like a hobby. It's like it borders that like hobby, business, whatever. And we don't know all those little tricks of like, this type of thing and like making sure everything's perfectly trademarked.
Well, and neither one of us have like a business background. And
I mean, I have a business degree.
Oh, never mind. I forget.
I'm just dumb. I just don't use it.
I forget though.
Well, something I want to say, if there's anyone that's listening, like, and I've had a number of women actually that just DM me and are like, "Hey, I'm thinking of starting a product-based business. Can I
I love
ask you some questions?" Like, whether it's that or whether it's sobriety related, if anyone is listening and wants to DM me and reach out, I am an open book and always willing to have a conversation. And so
that.
like
Thank you so
feel free
much.
to reach out. I think there's enough success to go around for everyone. And so I am
Yes.
all about, empowering each other
Yeah.
and also like removing like gatekeeping, just being like an open
Mhm.
Yes.
book with
Yes.
all of our resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one thing that's like a great piece of advice for anyone looking to start a product-based business in terms of like manufacturing, I think that's part of that can be the biggest challenge is like sourcing a factory.
For sure.
Um, there's this trick called or this site called importyeti.com. So this is like this golden nugget of like the product-based business space where you can go in and type a brand. So you could type in, I don't know, like any of your like little sleepies or kite baby or whatever it is. And then it tracks all of the imports into the United States. And so you can pull up their
Find
manufacturing
out.
information
Right.
and then you'll just like Google the factory and find a contact information. I mean, that's literally how I found my factory and then just
That's
like sent a
amazing.
random WhatsApp to like someone in China and they
Wow. And it
responded.
worked. And it worked. Like that's the
Wow.
kind of stuff like I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. And it's
Yeah.
it's the sharing, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. And I totally agree with there's enough room to go around. And something we talked about, I feel like recently, is like these people that are so successful and influential, they started somewhere and they just had to want it bad enough that they didn't take no for an answer and they kept pushing. And so I
Yeah.
think like, hopefully we can all be good examples of what that looks like, at some point. I think Motette's gonna
Yeah.
just go
Yeah,
off.
you've already got it.
Yeah, you're crushing it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I love it. But it's inspiring. It really is. And like,
Yeah.
you have two young kids, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna handle this and be
Mhm.
my own boss and do my own thing. Like, badass. That's all. That's all I can say. That's
Well, it's
amazing.
inspiring because we've just toyed around. I won't mention like any details, but like we've toyed around with like what would that look like if we wanted to start a business together, and
Yeah.
it's hard to want to go out on
It's
that limb.
intimidating.
It's intimidating, and if like both of our husbands were both on board, actually, they were like, "All right, like let's do
Quit
it."
your jobs tomorrow. I was
But
like,
but I'm like, but what? Like what happened? And so just hearing these success stories of real people, like doing real things, like you are a mom to two little ones, and like you're out there killing it, and
Yeah.
it's just I'm
Yeah.
so impressed. And
so if
I
our
love it.
husbands come for you, Sam, it's because we have been inspired to. We're putting in our resignation right now.
wait, my assistant principal.
Oh yeah, I
listens.
forgot.
I'm not
Just
resigning.
kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
We're dreaming.
Yeah. Yeah. Someday, not today. I'll be like, I mean, I won $900 in an airport slot machine yesterday, and so I'm basically ready to.
You're
Yeah,
banking
there you go. There's your
all the
seed
good luck.
funding.
That's all I needed. I mean, I am a teacher, so that's really like pretty substantial in regards to like in relation to my salary. So
It's like a really good bonus.
I'm just gonna like call it quits. I'm just kidding. If anyone from work is listening, I'm not kidding.
We're just joking.
I
y'all.
just wish. But yeah, well, cool. Is there anything else you wanted to like share with us before we go, or do anything? I don't even know what we're at on
I
time.
would say follow my account on Instagram. It's at Shop Motette and check out my website, shopmotette.com. And I'm so excited to officially launch on March 14th and share it with the world. So yeah,
And
thanks
it's
so much for
Motette,
having me.
Moteette. Correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll also be tagging you and like
Oh, yeah,
our
yeah,
socials and everything, but just in case someone's just listening, they
Yes.
can refer back to this.
Yes,
So
I know. I cannot wait to see what you do. I cannot wait to see you blow up, and then we can say like we were there first.
Yes.
We believe in you from day one, and ride your coattails. I love it. I'm so excited, and we really appreciate you being patient with us and
taking the time to talk to us. So
yeah.
fun fact, it's actually when we started 9 a.m. your time, and
It is, yes.
it's afternoon time for us.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the fact
I'm
that
in
you
the
started out
future.
in
It's
the morning,
tomorrow.
You are in the future. Yeah. When I flew to Australia, I lost a day. because we left at
Exactly.
night and I landed. So I lost like June 6th or June, something like that. Like my birthday or day after my birthday didn't exist because of the time I left.
I mean, thank God you didn't fly on your birthday, so you didn't
I
miss
know.
your.
My father-in-law tried to sabotage me by doing that flight. And I was like, sir, please. I'm only turning 21 once.
Like, I'm not gonna miss this
I'm
whole
not
day.
missing this day. I will be out doing the things. So, okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much
Yes,
for your time
I-
as always. And we will see you later. So I guess we'll end with the cheers of our water. I don't know if you've got a drink, Sam. Cheers. Ooh, I can't wait to turn the mic.
Cheers.
Perfect. Even better.
Cheers.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Sam.